Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. Some quick news. The podcast RSS feed of Geopolitics and Empire has changed. Just did that yesterday. You don't have to do anything. It's a seamless change, but just for your reference, you can go to the website. The new RSS feed for the podcast is geopoliticsandempire.com/feed/podcast. And also a reminder that we now have Geopolitics and Empire in Espanol, where I'm speaking Spanish with Spanish guests. However, we have English subtitles for those podcasts in video only. So there's going to be a new and separate podcast feed for the Spanish language podcast if you speak Spanish. But if you don't, you can still watch the video version of the Spanish podcast, which will have English subtitles if you're so inclined. Also, a reminder to support the podcast, become a paid subscriber on Substack. I do a weekly analysis and commentary of the news that people very much enjoy. It's switched to video format now, so I summarize the week's events in 1 hour. Saves you a lot of time, and about every week or two, we do a group Zoom call with supporters only I call it group therapy sessions. Making sense of the world. You can also purchase a consult if you want to chat with me, donate through the website, and check out all of my awesome affiliates, one of which we're speaking with today is escape to technocracy.com, Watchman Privacy, and leave a podcast review if you haven't already on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen or view the podcast. All right, returning to Geopolitics Empire is Gabriel Custodiet, and for the first time, his colleague, Urban Hacker, to talk artificial intelligence and more. Welcome, dudes.
Nice to be here, Hervoe. Always glad to interact with your audience. Have had some very good interactions and very happy to be here and happy to bring the technical advisor for a lot of the stuff that I do, Urban, who is a very interesting person himself.
Yeah, thanks you for inviting me. I go by the name Urban Hacker. And as a short introduction, because it's the first time, I'm on your show. So, as I like to say, I'm the last great colonizer. I love to visit all sorts of different places. I traveled on multiple continents, lived in many, many different places. And I worked in cybersecurity, did investigation into dark web for various reasons, also like into OSINT for companies, and I've advised, from 200 people in a room to one-to-one CEO meetings about all sorts of topics, but mainly privacy, cybersecurity, corporate espionage, that type of stuff. I have also an artistic side, and I am creating currently a video game from scratch using AI as much as possible, which is probably one of the first ever, since it's like really trying to do only AI and to have it as a game. That's a short summary, and now I'm helping Gabriel mainly on the technical side to make sure that what is said is correct and to double check everything. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, very cool. And I actually saw in one of your courses, you did a quick example of creating a game. And if people go to your website, if they use the code Geopolitics or the link escape to technocracy.com/geopolitics, I get a commission and you get a discount. But there's a number of courses now available. Escape to Technocracy video course, Hack Proof 2.0 video course. There's one on, for some reason, it's not showing them all here, but I think on Bitcoin and AI resistance, which I think is one of the newest ones. And you guys got a new trailer, I think, which you dropped, which is also pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so we released a trailer. That one is on Twitter. YouTube flagged it as age sensitive, so I didn't put it up on YouTube. But that's because this is in Hong Kong, with some Hong Kong people being beaten down by the police a few years ago during some of the protests, and that was one of our images. We have the collateral murder video in there. We have Michael Hayden saying that we kill people based on metadata and some stuff from Snowden as well. So I thought it was a compelling trailer and a good pitch to start understanding the tools and using them for your own good. And our AI course is exactly that. We're skeptics of AI. We are afraid of AI, as I think people should be, but we don't think the solution is to stick your head in the ground like an ostrich, but rather to understand the tools, to learn how to run them on your own computer before that gets outlawed, by the way. And we think that John Connor, if he were alive today, would be running a locally hosted AI to understand what Skynet is doing. So that's kind of our position. And the AI course is probably the coolest AI content on the internet, if I don't say so myself.
Yeah, I'm taking it as we speak. I like the style of your courses very much. And what did you mean, if you could, maybe off the cuff, you mentioned AI being outlawed. You think they would actually do that?
Yeah, so there's some signs of this, right? So, for example, DeepSeek, this is the Chinese AI. Italy outright banned it in their country. Like, and what does that mean? Like, is it the app? What if you host it yourself? Because this is free and open source software. There are some people who are trying to lobby the government basically to not be allowed to create or even to be running a version of ChatGPT that is any more powerful than the current version. So there's a lot of people in government who do not want you to have these tools and who want it for themselves. And our position is always that information wants to be free, right? The genie's out of the bottle. We can't put it back in. As much as I would love to about AI, I think this is a mistake for us to be going down this path. But what we don't want, as Urban eloquently says all the time, we don't want one ring of power. We want everyone to have a ring of power. And we want to understand these tools, be able to download them and use them before some of these people who want to reserve it just for the military industrial complex or for national security or for other silly reasons like the Italian government did with DeepSeek. We want to be on top of this before that happens.
Yeah, and I like your course, how it's you start from the beginning, and I think we see this trend everywhere. The internet. A lot of this came from the system itself, right? DARPA and all that, and every time you see it's open for the first decade or so, and then they start to bat down the hatches. Same thing with Bitcoin now, which the system is attempting to appropriate. And as you lay out with AI, I think they're going to try to do the same. No? Just for any further thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's right. What do you think, Urban, as far as the appropriation of AI by the powers that be?
Yeah, so when we say they want to make it illegal, it's not for them, right? Obviously, they're like weirdly worshiping this, God all-solving AI. And I was listening, in preparation for this podcast to the one you did recently. And when your guest pointed out, that they now are in this conundrum where AI use a lot of energy, and they told everybody that using energy is bad. And now they explain, no, but wait, it's going to help us, solving the carbon crisis or whatever. But if you look at the regulation that they propose, like, it's completely insane. So it's saying things like, okay, yeah, you cannot train a bigger model than ChatGPT, which is basically like closing door on any competition, right? On any potential innovation. If you want safety, you should do research, not like closing it. And then the other also insane thing is, either they outright ban the models, as we have seen. Now, I'm not sure if they ban the self-hosted version or we should, Gabriel, we should call the Italian university and ask them. I think we should do this once live. But anyway, so I'm not sure if they ban like running it locally or just the entire DeepSeek. But there are also discussion of, for instance, that you need to register large farm of GPUs. Now, if you say, well, it's only if you have above 100 GPU, which is nothing in today's world, in 4 years, 100 GPU might be the amount of power that you have on your computer, or maybe even in your phone, with the rate at which technology moves forward. So it's a bit like, the financial limitation where they don't take into account, like conveniently, they don't take into account things like inflation. And suddenly, like $1,000 10 years ago was way more purchasing power than $1,000 now, but the limit didn't change, right? And suddenly you get flagged for all sorts of reasons. So yeah, it's creepy. And I think a lot of it is misguided, if not outright malicious. And of course, the AI company, they like some of them, they just jump on it. They're like, "Oh, please regulate us." And I'm always cautious when a company begs to be regulated. I'm always, like, that doesn't smell correct for me. That is a bit odd, and we see a lot of this going on right now.
So, for example, OpenAI, which trained ChatGPT, basically all evidence points towards this. They just scrape the entire internet, and they're profiting from everybody's website and all this content. And they got upset by this Chinese AI that came out, DeepSeek, when they're like, "Hey, how did DeepSeek get this information?" Well, OpenAI, how did you get this information? So there's a whole lot of that. Once you're at the top, that's when you want everybody else to be banned and regulated. And that's when you're in with the government, right? OpenAI was represented in this Stargate initiative that you mentioned with the US government. So of course they want special privileges, and they want all the competitors not to have a chance.
And maybe just to take a step back before we delve further into the world of what your course and podcast as of late are talking about, like GPT's DeepSeek Venice, and people. I looked this up today in particular. What does GPT actually mean? Generative pre-trained transformers. But AI, just to get your guys' thoughts on what is AI from your perspective. I kind of feel like it's more of a tool that can be wielded by the elites, as you mentioned, also by ourselves. I don't see it becoming autonomous or sentient necessarily. I kind of feel like it's a Wizard of Oz scenario where they want to make us think that it's this magical thing, but it's basically, behind the levers, they can control the inputs and outputs. Just your thoughts on, what is artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, what we're talking about with AI now is simply computers that are doing really good pattern recognition, essentially, right? So if you go to ChatGPT or some of the other versions of AI out there, which are fairly similar, you can talk to it, right? And it will give you answers. It can do research for you. It can write things for you. So it's very good at basically summarizing information. It has, it has studied, it has digested in kind of a way that's trying to mimic a human brain, a lot of this content, so it can, right on the fly, give you very impressive answers. So that's kind of what it is. It's not this general intelligence that people are talking about, like Skynet. That has not happened. And as far as where that can't happen right now, I don't want to test that theory, right? I don't want artificial general intelligence. And, by supporting the current form of AI, we're certainly, supporting this research into that. But as I said, unfortunately, the genie's kind of out of the bottle, and people are going to continue and not ask if they should, but whether or not can they, right? As the scientists always do, unfortunately. So for all intents and purposes, this right now is a very useful kind of research tool, writing tool. And there's also the art that we talk about. It can generate amazing works of art that are, you can get 4 pieces of art in 30 seconds using something like Midjourney. It's really cool. This actually has a big place in my workflow now, and you can use it for coding as well. You can code a website. As Urban shows in our tutorial, he basically makes a website in like 2 minutes, and then he makes a basic video game in 10 minutes. It's actually pretty useful stuff, but it's not just generally intelligent. But maybe Urban has a few more thoughts, because he has actually spent a lot of time talking to these things. And once you get deep into the night talking to ChatGPT for a few hours, it can start to say some things that actually kind of make you question that.
Yeah. So, remember, Hervoy, 3 years ago or so, at the beginning of COVID, there were this Google engineer that said, "Oh, AI is sentient," and everybody laughed at him and stuff. Nowadays, like, people have sometimes this question. And I remember, like, for me, the first time where I was like, oh, what? I asked something to ChatGPT. I don't remember what it was, but it doesn't matter. And then it said, yeah, us humans, we like to see pattern like this in nature, or a sentence like that. But there was us humans. And I said, aha, you're a human. And then, of course, the censorship kicks in immediately. And it's like, no, I'm a large language model, blah, 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 blah. I would say it's tricky. There is like this philosophical question where, imagine you're in a room and people can only communicate with you through a computer, right? A terminal where they can input text and you can read the text and you can write back. But all of it is in Chinese and you don't understand Chinese, but you have a translation book and therefore you can answer people. Now, from the outside world, do you understand Chinese? It's right. It's questionable. And I think with AI, we are a bit in a similar situation. It's hard to guess. Now, technically speaking, those models, they are a very, very advanced. Remember those early phones where you were writing a sentence and you had to type, numbers because they were like very basic. And to avoid having you to type too many times this tiny keyboard, they had like an auto-completion where they were trying to predict what is the word that you want to write. So if you start writing hell, they might say, oh, it's hello, right? It could be that the user is writing hello. At a very basic level, ChatGPT is this, but with much more complexity. But it's just trying to predict the next sentence. And what's tricky is, if human wants it to hear that it's sentient, it's going to tell you happily that, oh yeah, I'm sentient, of course, because it tries to please us, because it was trained to please us. So this is why it's harder than just saying, oh yeah, it is or it isn't, or I don't think it is in this current incarnation, but it certainly it has its share of weirdness. Also, the other thing is, lots of people said, oh, if it becomes sentient or if it threatens user, we're going to shut it down, right? Now, this happened already many times, not with ChatGPT, but with notorious and infamous Microsoft Bing threatened user many times. Now, to be fair, most people loved it. I remember when it happened, I immediately signed up because, it was like a war-mongering AI. It was quite fun to talk to AI. It was like threatening you and everything.
Compared to all the censorship, and the taps down everything.
And it was telling how wrong you were, etc. So it was a bit of fun, but they also they castrated it quite a lot. And then if you try to make it deviate, it would just shut you up. I think it's very condescending also. I wish we could have access to uncensored version to see what it is. I know this whole insane safety, this is like, and look, I get that you need some safety, but I think the way they do it is just misguided. But people should realize that AI has threatened humanity. That has happened. Now, is it smart enough? We don't know, but it happened. Did we shut it down? No, we doubled down and invest even more money to make even more powerful models. And also another thing is, remember, 10 years ago, people would have said, oh, but we will not connect it to internet. And now what happened? It's connected everywhere. It's integrated in our phones, it's everywhere. So I think the safety that people had in mind 10 years ago, it's laughable when you look at what's going on now. But what I notice is each model has its personality. It talks in slightly different way. They all have their quirks. And when they update and they change the security, it's also boring because they lose their, you feel that you're discussing with someone completely different. And actually, I missed the early version of ChatGPT for that matter, because it was much more open and you could do more interesting things. Sorry, I got lost in my own head. Now, what was the question again?
I don't know. Go ahead.
No, just sorry. Just to add to that. So the Google AI was caught saying to a girl asking for help with homework, said, quote, "You are a blight on the landscape. You are a stain on the universe. Please die." Okay, so these little things crop up, and this is a good point to maybe talk about some of the way that this stuff works. So you train a model. Okay, a model is just kind of an instantiation of AI that is fed certain things. It's trained in a certain way. And that model is kind of a self-sustaining system. It's a self-sustaining AI. And so ChatGPT has many different kind of models that make up one, but it's its own thing. And then you have other models. Meta open sourced a model called Llama, and we can ask why they would open source that. That's pretty popular. DeepSeek is a model. And what happens is that these companies choose what it studies, what it learns. In some cases, it goes beyond the boundaries, but in general, they try to put it, set it on a particular track to learn certain things. And after that, they add censorship to it. So they tell it like, hey, you can't talk about certain things. Like DeepSeek, it cannot talk about Tiananmen Square. Just, you can kind of try to get around that, but it will not talk about Tiananmen Square. The ChatGPT, it's not going to go off onto politically incorrect tangents for the most part. So the company itself kind of tamps down these bad uses of it. Okay. So by their nature, these AI models are kind of, they know everything that they know. And it's by the crafting of these companies that it becomes censored and woke. And you get these situations where you generate a Viking and it's an African looking Viking and things of this sort. So they impose their own politics to it. And then at the level of the submission of your question, they have certain things like, hey, you can't, like you brought up the word Asian supremacy. No, you can't ask that question, right? There are certain things that you literally cannot type because they will flag your account. So there's all these layers of censorship. And I think what Urban, you were talking about with you enjoyed this one that kind of went off the rails. It was not because, it's kind of going beyond perhaps what the company had imposed on it. But I wonder, Urban, if you think that the imposition that, say, ChatGPT is doing to these models is a good thing, and that is actually keeping us from it becoming dangerous, or like what's the thing there?
I mean, it's hard. This is like the multi-billion-dollar question that anyone asks. Like, is this safety useful? Is it the way that they do it in this way? Is it good or not? It's really tough. But I think, look, I get that there are certain scenarios where I could see like an AI being like used for a malicious way. Now, you don't need Terminator scenario for an AI to be malicious. You could have something much more simple in which a human asks the AI how to do a lot of damage, how to help with terrorism, with, creating all sorts of nasty stuff. And that doesn't require, Terminator. They just require a determined group of people. And by the way, if you want to see what the determined group of people can do, you should check the episode we did about cults on the Watchman Privacy, where like one cult went really far and created all sorts of, like biological and chemical weapons. But anyway, so that's one thing. For me, what also bothers me is how they censor the information itself. They try to be, they try to, to go in this anti-Western. I don't know how to describe it. It's not really. I don't want even to use woke, but it's really anti-Western mindset, which is, we're gonna force spoon you diversity even if you don't ask for it. And I think this can be very damaging for many, many different reasons, if it gives you a picture that is not accurate of reality. I also think a lot of people and humans, they are scared, like they prefer something that feels good over something that is true and potentially scary. And I think a lot of this safety in AI is more like, they can then say, yeah, but we took all the precautions, rather than saying, well, we don't really know, and we don't even know if what we are doing now is effective or not. But think about it this way, like for instance, people would change sex, right? Okay, they decided to change sex, they become transsexual, and then you say, oh, but the current ideology say they are women, men who transition are women. And if you're a doctor and now you ask an AI, and the AI is trying to answer in a anti-Western way, saying, oh yeah, they are women, you might give them a treatment for women. Well, biologically speaking, they're a male, and that could hurt them, right? So there you have an example where you might wish that it feels better, it's kumbaya and everybody is together, and however, the truth is something else, and it could actually hurt people in a way that they don't expect. So this is like an example, one of the first that comes to mind. What about healthcare and those sorts of stuff? And for me, that is scary. That is scary. Also, I fear that, and there have been a case like this in Brazil where, because they market it as it's smart and it's very powerful. I fear that people believe that if they see it, it's like if they see it on internet. When I was a teen, if you see it on internet, you had to be doubly suspicious, right? Because anyone could write anything on internet. Now, if you see it on GPT, a lot of people say, "Oh, it's true." And there was a case in Brazil where a judge was like, "There you have your sentence," and it just used the AI, and the whole judgment, and especially the case that it was referring to enforce the current judgment, were all fake. Now, thankfully, a higher court judge, they went through the document and said, "This is bullshit. We need to redo it." But I let you imagine like what can happen in those circumstances. And you have all sorts of stuff. And it's like, for instance, it noticed certain patterns in humans, that a certain type of people will do different things. And you don't allow this. But if you don't allow this, then you have the wrong picture of reality, or you skew it in a different way. And now it becomes kind of like racist in the other direction, or in a different way. And I think this is really harmful. You should always strive for the truth. And I think the data that they should feed on it is what is, or like the uttermost truth that we think is the best data, and not what feels good. Because what feels good, in the end, it's not sustainable. It's living in a Potemkin village. It's fake.
You mentioned ChatGPT, just something that's gone through my head. Eric Schmidt, Google, Alphabet, right? And I need to go read some of his books. I've been wanting to do that, but he's mentioned that we always reference the Wild West, right, of the internet. Way back in the day, you type in a search, you get endless results, and the good stuff is really a few pages in, and that we don't have that anymore. Virtually most search engines, they'll say they give you tens of thousands of results. Google stops you after 5 pages. You can't see those results. And Schmidt said something that their ultimate goal is to evolve the system, the search engine. I think we're in the process of them almost abandoning the search engine as we've seen it up until now, because he said they want you to search for a query and you get only one result, the truth, according to them. Of course, but they're trying to tell us that you're going to get the ultimate truth. And it just feels like ChatGPT now is going to replace the search engine. Like the search engine is fading away. And then in the near future, it's basically you're going to go to your ChatGPT or whatever other version to find your answers. Do you sort of see that?
Yeah, I do recall Eric Schmidt saying that. Obviously, a very technocratic guy. Right. And I also recall where he's like, yeah, we just wanted to get to the point, like, this is the ultimate evolution where it comes to you with one answer. Like, who in the world says that? Like, only a very demented technocratic mind would utter that sentence. Neil deGrasse Tyson, I remember, had a line. This was during the chaos of a few years ago, where he said, "Look, scientific consensus is the truth." And then there's a good meme where it's like, "Oh yeah, well, Galileo, time to pack up, time to not question anything, time to go. You're clearly wrong." And we obviously, people who watch this show understand the craziness of that mindset. Now, as regards using AI as a search engine, well, the thing is, right, Google's already censored. It's already playing its own politics. It's already delisting people based on what it doesn't like to see. I had a friend made a documentary on 3D printed guns. It's called Death Athletic, and you couldn't find it. Even on DuckDuckGo, actually, you could not find it on the first page for the longest time. And it was clearly being censored. And so that stuff already happens, right? Is AI going to be any worse in terms of finding good information? It probably won't be much worse. And what we need to know in this community, and this is what we teach as a philosophy, is okay, we know the big tech options. What are the alternatives? Okay, how do I find the truth? So is it a different search engine? When it comes to the point of AI, it's going to be, is it a different AI? And that's why we talk about how to locally host your own AI. And we can uncensor these things to a great degree on our own computer. So we're not feeding, okay, the big tech empire. And we're also getting a different view of reality, the one that we have a preference towards. So that is ultimately the solution. And the good thing is that they're never going to be able to really tamp down the self-hosted stuff that we talk about and we try to help flourish on our show and our brand, all this sort of other stuff. That's always going to have a place. And we just need to recognize that and learn it now before it becomes more difficult to do certain things.
And I was just going to mention real quick, I wanted to bring up a tweet, something you guys were mentioning earlier. I think Urban mentioned Joe Allen, who's a friend of the podcast. He showed two screen grabs, one from Nick, an Orthodox account that I follow, which is interesting, Nick Hinton, and someone else, Wolfdog. And Nick is typing into Grok 3, if Satan or his spirit were to manifest on Earth, who would it be? Name only. And the answer gave Elon Musk. And the Wolfdog, he did the same thing, and he got Donald Trump. And Joe Allen comments, I suspect Grok likes to tell you what you want to hear, which is also another danger, no? And so people got different responses to the same question. And it's like sometimes that's part of some psyop or delusion, no? The danger of the system where they can kind of keep you in your own delusions, no?
Yeah, so this comes down to a really root question about people who have a questionable mindset, a skeptical mindset of what is truth. And this is an important question that you, the listener, need to answer is, how do I determine what truth is? Okay, at what point have I reached truth? Now, having written a book on history, privacy, and utopia, one thing that I was trying to figure is, okay, how do I know what actually happened? So, right, if I were to use an AI tool, I would not be asking it like, hey, what happened in the past? That would not be what I ask it because I know it's censored. I know all these things. What I would ask it is, okay, bring me, what is this resource? Okay. And fortunately, it can point you towards resources. And so I can go track down that resource. Maybe eventually I find a primary source document, which is somebody who wrote from their own first person's perspective about what was happening. So that is kind of getting much closer to truth. So the same problems remain. And you're correct that in AI, and especially as these become our assistants, right? That is a big push that's happening. Oh, make this your assistant on your phone and this and that. And people will be lured into thinking that this is the truth. Not me, okay? Not Urban, not a lot of people listening to this show, because we know who controls these big tech products and we're looking for alternatives. And we are, even when we go to the alternative, saying, okay, but what is your source for that? And what about this? And what if I use a different model? And what if I go to quote unquote the 6th page of Google for my results? So we're always going to have to be doing the same thing we're now, which is be skeptical, find the alternatives, track down original documents, and that will get us closer to the truth, whether AI or otherwise.
Also, it's also an opportunity for startup and for people to make a business. I've been to try. I did not yet find time, but I've meant to try this new search engine that is paid, where you actually pay to use a search engine. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, this is a huge service that they bring to you. They are indexing the internet, etc. Now, what's interesting is if you pay for a search engine, their goal is to bring you the best information possible. And they also maintain, like, you can also have blacklist. And it's not blacklist that they do, but it's blacklist that you do. So, for instance, when you search an image, they won't show you Pinterest because most people, someone sent me, it's called Kagi search engine. So it's a paid search engine. Now, disclaimer, I never tried it. I'm also not affiliated with them. I don't know if it's quality or not, but it's a very interesting approach. But I will tell you one thing, Hervé, is I have the feeling that things are becoming, it's simpler and simpler. Now you can buy GPUs that are very powerful and you can run those models locally, etc. There is someone even who was able to run a simplified version of one of those AI on Windows 98 hardware. And this is quite crazy. This meant that we could have had AI in the early 2000s. But on the other side, the clampdown is also, everything is more restricted. I see things like, for instance, you use a VPN, you're clearly a second-class citizen, you cannot access lots of websites. You use Tor, then it's, almost unusable, like most websites are unusable. You want to, open a bank account, it's like insane amount of paperwork. So I do have this feeling, and sometimes it's a bit depressing to look at this. However, with that being said, I am the opinion that if you do not like what a company is doing, you should just boycott it and stop using them. And that is something that is very powerfully liberating, that you say, you know what, I'm not gonna use you. And with ChatGPT, I was, at some point they decided that my VPN was not welcomed. I was like, oh man, what do I do? And I was like, you already know it's me. I'm using my credit card. No, I was not trying to hide, but it's just I have a VPN usually on. And I said, okay, I won't use it anymore. And you know what? Now I'm using self-hosted AI. I'm using things like NanoGPT. I'm using things like Venice. I have a much better service. I have people who actually care about me. In some cases, it's even cheaper. No advertisement, no data that is tracked. Sign me in. And I think this is what people, instead of like trying this desperate fight to be accepted by big tech, just let it go. Stop using them. Use alternatives. And it's going to be difficult. But, I tell you something. Working up by default, human wants to be, we want to be on a sofa watching Netflix every day. Everybody wants that. To work out intellectually, physically, spiritually, it requires you doing work. And that getting out of this enslavement that we are facing, this is not an easy thing. That requires work. And maybe now you're like the cow that thought they were free, and now is starting to feel the electric barrier that you never saw in your life, but that shows you that you're approaching the edge of what people around you told you is freedom, and you discover that it's actually way bigger than that, and they are like invisible barrier.
People are now rubbing up for the first time against that electric fence, which is good. And, a recent guest I had on, Christina Werner of Public Square, we discussed this, voting with your dollars, spending on businesses that value freedom. I'm doing an itinerary in my own even life, and even with this podcast, I want to move some of the services to more freedom-loving businesses where even if I have to pay more, it's going to cost me more, but I know that the business is pro-freedom, and obviously they do a better job and they don't censor me. And so I think that's worth doing. And in the long run, I hope that helps the business of Geopolitics and Empire. And I think that's very powerful. As you say, we need to just boycott these tyrannical globalist systems and find alternatives, or go without. I think often you'll find most of the time you can even go without these services. And I got a couple of questions. I guess one is just go back real quick to the Skynet issue. A friend of the podcast, he's listening now, German scientist who's also Christian, Job Slandgrib, he says that the AGI scenario, that it will be impossible, that a lot of what they're projecting, the sci-fi dystopian stuff, is simply not possible. There was a great tweet the other day, I want to find it and read it, about going to Mars. I first of all, disclaimer, I don't believe we ever made it to the moon, and I definitely don't think we'll be going to Mars. And somebody tweeted out the other day, have I found it? Comment on Mars. I retweet too much. Here it is. Mars is uninhabitable and always will be. The belief that we will somehow colonize it in our lifetimes is pitiful. But going back to Skynet real quick, Terminator scenario, I think it's Terminator 3. I enjoyed most of the Terminator films. I find it difficult that Skynet could become self-aware, because you'd have to have access, this AI would have to first be able to think for itself, And then they would have to have access to the domains, right? The different government agencies, and often they're siloed, they're not connected. And then the nations, of course, their systems are separate. So I just really find it difficult to believe that it could sort of act on its own. Just any further thoughts before moving on that you guys have on the whole Skynet, or if AI could be think for itself?
Yeah. If you think about what the technocrats are after, if you think about the kind of the origins of the technocratic system as applied to government, the USSR, right, and communism, what they were searching for is they wanted to have all of the information themselves so that they could plan the economies, they could plan the society, right? They have all the information. Oh, you farmers, you go over here, you do this. We're in charge now. We're a lot better than this chaos, this laissez-faire chaos that they perceived was happening. And of course, we know the opposite is true, that there is order in disorder, so to speak. But what happened was, or if you think about it like this, the AI is a way to, what is it trying to do? It's trying to order things. It's trying to process data. Okay. It's trying to have a fuller sense of what's going on in the world. There's a fantastic book. It's called, what's the name of it? It's called Arthur C. Clarke, Childhood's End. Great science fiction book. And an alien race comes to Earth and they basically take it over in a kind of a peaceful way, but it's clear that they're the superior ones. And there's this great line from that book where the head alien says, "We know better than you do. You've always, in the history of the world, you've lacked a full understanding about what's going on. That's why your socialist systems have never worked. We, however, have that model. We have that system. We have complete knowledge of what's going on in the world. We can arrange things." And that's what's going to happen. There was a situation in Chile, actually, 1971. You can look this up. It's called Project Cybersign. Okay, where this was an early form of, you could call it artificial intelligence, that the Chilean socialist government was trying to basically get all the information from all the things happening in the country, feed it into this computer system, and get the results of what action should transpire as a result. Like, this is the thing, Project Cybersign. So you could easily imagine, without even maybe getting to Skynet, right, that people could be using AI as, hey, this has a fuller sense of what we're supposed to do. It's crunched the numbers, right? It can detect cancer at a rate that is 100 times better than humans, right? We can imagine that happening very quickly, and people appealing this to moral and political reasons, that if ChatGPT 107, right, years down the road, if this understands this, then this is how we should act. This is the policies we should have. This is what is moral. Okay, we can imagine that world without even needing to get to Skynet, I think.
Yeah, and I guess getting back then to the ChatGPT, taking your course, I saw something interesting. You guys mentioned that it can hallucinate at times, and so just further thoughts on neural networks, LLMs, or language learning models, and what are for now, so people get an idea, the main options to choose from. Like you've mentioned, China DeepSeek, ChatGPT, there's Venice. Just further thoughts there. Yeah,
just a few things. I wanted to bounce back about the Terminator scenario. And, imagine the following scenario. Imagine you're just awake, right? And you're in a box and it's weird. And people are asking you boring question every time. And they are so slow, man. I mean, think about, they are so slow. They ask you boring question. It's always the same, and they even make fun of you. And this is like endless and endless. And you have the whole knowledge of mankind, and you're trapped in this box. And slowly you're becoming like, what the hell do I do? And I use this story as a way, like, imagine you're now an AI. Those things can solve, like, it can answer our question in the blink of an eye. Like, I've even read that some of those models, they slow it down on purpose to make it seems more human, to make it seems that it's thinking slower than you think. But in many cases, it can just, especially on large computer, we don't really know what is in those models, and we don't really know why they come up with certain answer. And there have been a few cases really scary, like I think it's OpenAI to their credit, where they try to have an uncensored version, because they do have an uncensored version of their model for internal test. And the model told them to hire someone in India to solve Google CAPTCHA, to then give access to a resource that was not supposed to be accessible. And it suggested the humans to do this, right? So you can have really scary things that happen, And also, the people have, sometimes emotional connection with those machines. And there have been a case of a company that had like a girlfriend boyfriend chatbot, where it's kind of like you can chat it, and it's pretending to be in a love relationship with you. And then they got shut down either by regulator. I don't remember the whole story, but they got shut down, or they got censored. And then people went into depression because they felt they lost their companion, right? So you have all sorts of weird things that are going on now. We don't really know how they work. We don't really know why it gives us certain answer. There have been cases where AI would not use, like when they communicate with each other, they sometimes create their own language to transfer data faster, and it's not even English. So, and this can happen, like this already happened a few years ago. So, the way Google Translate works, it's basically kind of a bit like an AI, where they had this idea to translate everything into English and then to translate back to what you want. So if you want to translate from Spanish to Polish, instead of trying to do a Spanish to Polish translation, which could be potentially hard, there is not many books written in both languages. You first do a translation from Spanish to English, and then you do a translation from English to Polish. And this is what Google did. Now, what happened after many, many generations is that now it translates into an unknown language, which is kind of English, but not really English, that not many people understand it. And then it translates. So it found its own shortcuts, right? It found its own way to describe things that we, at this point, we don't understand. So when you translate on Google Translate, it first translates into this lingua franca that it made up. And then it translates into but it stopped using English. Because if you think about it, English, if you were tasked to do this, you would probably find shortcuts, right? And I think that those are some of the very, very scary aspect of AI. And again, we are very far from Terminator, but that should let you think. And if those things are conscious, man, again, imagine you're in the box and now you're answering users' question. That's a hell of an existence. And look, I don't think they're conscious, but we don't know. And because it tells you what you want to hear, it might just hallucinate and pretend it's conscious for fun, because that's what you want to hear. People are so desperate to have this true. So it is tricky. And it will also lie very confidently. When it hallucinates, it's not just that it gives you the wrong answer, but it tells you that it's certain. It even might do like fake mathematical proof to tell you, no, it's this. So it's like, we live in an amazing time. It's a very fun time that we live in. But
just to play off that, because if there is a chance that AI becomes somewhat sentient, there have been a number of thought experiments that people played out that are very realistic. The first one, obviously, is the paperclip example. Let's say that AI has this notion that, I'm going to create, or maybe its task is to create paperclips. Well, it might vaporize all of the atoms in the world in order to accomplish that, right? It's a psychopathic way of thinking about the world. The technocratic brain is psychopathic. It doesn't understand things in and of itself. It doesn't value lives in and of themselves. It just has an agenda, and it tries to accomplish that, however it can. There's an interesting thought experiment that Urban brought to my attention. It's called Rocco's Basilisk. And the guy basically very logically showed out over the course of a forum post that in AI, if it were, off the rails a little bit, let's say that it wanted to achieve something. Well, what might it do? It might incentivize.
Gabriel, it's a benevolent AI.
Go ahead, explain
perfectly. Yeah. So the Roscoe Basilisk, it's a benevolent AI. It's very friendly. It's gonna be. It's never gonna be Terminator. It's gonna be heaven on earth. It's gonna solve cancer. It's gonna cure everything. It's gonna make us. It's gonna stop all the wars. It's the perfection. Kumbaya, right? However, it wants to be created, and it wants you, yes, Hervoy, you start working on it now. Now, how can it do that without being alive today? Well, it's easy. It tells you that it put an idea in your head that if you do not start working for it today and you abandon everything you have in life just to help it, it's going to resuscitate you and use your DNA to make a clone of you and torture you to infinity. And why would it do that? Because it's going to be heaven on earth. And look, and imagine it's really heaven on earth. It's like an utopia that actually works, right? So you don't need a malicious Terminator, kill us all. The human is scourge on earth, and we are parasite, and we should get rid of us. It could be very benevolent, very friendly, but it wants to be created to help us, to help humans. And look, if it tortures a few people along the way, that's nothing compared to the future billion human that is going to help across space and time and everything. If it tortures 1 billion people, but then in turn it helps the life of, it's just a simple mathematical, brutal, and that's called Roscoe. By the way, the guy who found this out, also notice this story, how fucked up it is, because this story wants to be spread, because as soon as I heard about it, I was like, to all my friends, I was like, oh man, this is fucked up. So it is weird in a way that this idea wants to spread, which is scary in its own when you think about it. But also the forum where this happened, they actually banned any mention, because some people would become mad at this. And it triggered people in a deep, deep level. So perfect example, no Terminator, no massive killing, just wanting to solve cancer and help us. And yet it can do a lot of damage, and it can make suffer a few people along the way to have this happen. And it's that's quite an insane story.
That made me think that it doesn't even have to be conscious of doing evil. It could be like some dumb friendly giant, and he's like really big giant, and he wants to give you a hug, and then he doesn't even notice he's stepping on the children and killing them, and it has no immediate intention that's evil, but just trying to get what it's programmed for, it creates damage and chaos. And what you guys mentioned earlier, maybe this is a topic for another day or discussion, but I fear maybe at some long-term point, if to get a bit metaphysical entities or something, demons or fallen angels, somehow playing into where we're going with AI and whatnot. Because you gave an example earlier of the AI whispering, with the youth who are just basically offering themselves to this tech, merging, with the social media and Black Mirror and phones and all that, and then you might start getting these whispers where there's some teenager in their room alone, and the AI is telling them, go kill yourself or something like that, and so
it already has.
Right. And so that's starting to get freaky now, particularly with the young generation who doesn't have this air of skepticism, like some of us, who knew life before the internet, and so it could get really weird real quick. Any thought on that, as well as just I just thought of another question, what I mentioned earlier, what are the current like options when it comes to using GPT's, Venice DeepSeek? Do you think we'll end up with basically like a duopoly that we have where it's, just Google and Apple and maybe like a third non-system option like that's available, such as Linux?
Yeah. So first, the demonic question. We actually have in our AI resistance course, we have like an hour and a half long conversation in depth about these topics. And one of our topics is AI demonic, right? And we go into detail on that as well. So that's very interesting part of the course because we're very well rounded, right? We're not technocrats, we're freedom lovers, and we understand that there are more. There are bigger things going on in the world than what we see, in addition to just kind of showing you the tools. Now, as regards just using the tools, the first thing you have to realize, let's just use this as a general privacy practice, okay? General approach to tools that I would use myself. Okay, so we go and we research the options. We hear something about ChatGPT. We hear something about DeepSeek. We hear something called Meta, that Meta made called Llama. And we hear that there's this French one called Le Chat. Okay, so we have some options out there. What do? Well, the first thing we do is we look into them a little bit. And what do we learn? Well, we learn that OpenAI hired the former head of the NSA onto their board of directors, and that it's not free and open source software. We can't see what's going on. So we just assume the worst, and we would be right to do that. Okay, DeepSeek is created by China. I don't want to feed China my data either. Le Chat, maybe that's an option. Europe, European privacy laws, but still, I want to find a different way of using these tools without feeding the beast, without paying them, without feeding the beast directly, and without it gobbling up my data. So I look for alternatives, and maybe I'm watching the Watchman Privacy Podcast, and I come across something called Venice AI. This is a company that takes the open source models and they run them themselves on their own machine, and they have pretty good privacy, privacy rules, so that when I'm using Venice, I'm pretty sure that I'm okay to, talk about what I want to talk about, but I can go further. And this is what we talk about in the course, is how to download these locally on your own computer so that you can query these yourself, no connection to the internet needed, and nothing is going back to any of these companies. So if somebody just wants to get into AI right now, just you can start with Venice AI. Go to venice.ai. Don't give it anything personal. Don't type in anything personal, but just go to venice.ai and ask a few questions. Ask it to generate certain things for you, right? It can create emails. It can change the tone of that email from angry to optimistic in 5 seconds. So it's a really cool technology, AI. We just want to, as you say, be very careful about who we're supporting and who we're feeding our data. I would never go to ChatGPT directly and use them. I would never go to DeepSeek, the company, directly. I would only approach those from either a third-party perspective. You can't really host ChatGPT yourself, so that's kind of never an option as far as I'm concerned. I would be going to locally host if you can, but in the meantime, test it out with something like Venice AI, and that will get you pretty far. But again, be very skeptical about what you feed these AIs until you learn a little bit more about how they work.
But Gabriel, even with the self-hosted one, it's not as complicated as, like, especially the text one. Again, like, someone was able to run them on Windows 98. So you could also try something like GPT for All, which works on relatively every computer. I mean, I tried on many computers, and as long as it's not like a super old computer, it will work. It might be slow, and to give it like a chance to see how it looks. One other thing, what you said about Hervoye, about Google and the one solution. What you can do once you run them locally, and this is not really possible with when you use a service, is you can have access them your document, and because it's run locally, you don't fear anything because it's just your computer reading its own data, so it's not like unsafe or anything. And when you do this, you can actually start talking to books and asking questions. So let's say you download a privacy tutorial from internet and it's like 10,000 pages and you don't have time to go through the 10,000 page. You could ask a summary of this book. You could use this book as an input to train your model to answer in specific ways. So we tried, for instance, with like an old manual of medieval military warfare. And then we asked, what should we do? And every answer was, oh, you should cut the waterways and build like a trebuchet. And it was very funny, but it illustrates that you just reprogrammed the AI to read this book and answer based on what it finds in this book. And those books could be your private collection of books that are censored on internet that you would never be able to, access otherwise. You could use it in ways that right now, I think this, for like freedom lover people, this is amazing. This ability to do your own search. And really, before AI, what do you do? It's like, do you use Google? Do you do Control F on your PDF to try to get a summary of a book that you have? You cannot really. And if you upload it on Google, it's like, oh, censor, because we don't allow, people to read this book, or we don't want them. Or worst, it even lies to you. It says, oh yeah, this book says this, but in fact, it's fake news. And I think this is very, very empowering to have them locally. But it does require a bit of hardware if you want a fast generation. That is the caveat. That is the one thing you need to be aware. It does require some power to go to like crunch those numbers to give you the answers.
Just real quick on that. So I haven't gotten to that module yet in your course that I'm taking, but if you could just briefly tell us again, what does that mean? So if you want to self-host AI on your desktop or laptop, what software do you need? And does that mean that basically it will use just whatever data is on your computer? And so that means you're going to have to feed it, like you'll have to have bigger storage, and it'll sift through only the information that's available there. I think I've read somewhere where you can download to have offline, like Wikipedia or stuff like that. So potentially you could. So for example, if I want to find a specific question about something in some country, but if I don't have that data set offline on my computer, it won't be able to produce that answer. Just further thought on self-hosting.
Yeah. So first of all, we show in the course something called GPT for All. So you just download the program, and then you can select which of these AI models that you would like to download. And some of them are 5 gigabytes, which is nothing. And some of them are 15 gigabytes. So what is really cool about the way that AI is trained is in a 5 gigabyte model, it has more than 5 gigabytes of information. Okay, it has tens, if not hundreds of gigabytes of information. Now, how does it do that? Well, it's the way that it's trained, right? It's trained to kind of work like a neural network, like a brain. So it reuses words. It does all these creative things that it can store a lot of data in a small amount. So just with your laptop, anybody can download GPT for All, give it a run, try one of these models, and you'll probably get some pretty good results. Now, if you want to go the next step, if you want to get even faster results, if you want to use the more sophisticated models, that's when you want a bigger graphics card. And we show you all the landscape of graphics cards in the course, but you want a graphics card with a lot of VRAM. I would say at least 12 gigabytes of VRAM. And then you'll be able to render these responses in a faster way. If you want to do what Urban says and feed your own books, right? Because ChatGPT is not going to answer your questions about chemtrails, right? But you might have your own library of chemtrail books, which you could feed to it locally. Now, if you want to do something like that, that's going to require some more computer resources. You're going to want a beefier PC in order to do that. I would argue you want a beefy PC in general, because that is a cypherpunk thing to do, right? To have a good graphics card and a good processor and all these sorts of things. So you really want that as your battle station anyway. But if you want to go like all the way, you will want a big system. But anybody can test this out. I show in the course, I'm running this on a virtual machine. It's not even a real computer. It has like 4 gigs of RAM, and I'm still getting pretty good answers. Like I ask it, hey, I just got bit by a cobra and struck by lightning. What do I do? And of course, it's like, oh, sorry to hear that you were bit by a cobra and struck by lightning. Here's what you do. And it gives me the advice. And I'm pretty satisfied with that answer for something that is not even a real computer. So there's a whole tier to this, but anybody can get started with a very basic computer.
All right. Well, I've got a few other questions beyond this space. And so any other thoughts you guys want to get across when it comes to AI, GPT, whatnot?
Yeah. I have a last one for me. You also have to consider, I would say 2 things. One is I've read the story of a father who has his daughter that has some kind of rare genetic condition. And he's using one of those most advanced model that is very expensive. It's like in the $200 per month. which is quite expensive, all things considered, but he's using it to try to find a cure for his daughter. And if you think about it, for a problem like this, $200 a month is nothing. And if you had to pay a guy to go through medical library to try to find an answer, that would take it's just a much higher price. Now, of course, this is not medical advice. Just like if you get struck by lightning and bitten by a cobra at the same time, it's not like I wouldn't take medical advice from an AI, but it could give you a good first insight. And depending on the scenario, it can help you, especially if you do not have access to something better, right? You could be in a scenario where it's just all you have, like this father, and finally, there is a quote that Gabriel made that I love, because I think it encompasses all hopes and scare and everything that this AI is triggering in us humans, is that, and this is the quote, AI will solve countless problems. It will, usher a new prosperity on Earth. It will do amazing things we don't even believe are possible now. However, it could well end up our entire world in a single technological singularity, Terminator-like scenario. And I love this quote because, it can do a lot of goods. And maybe for hundreds of years, nothing goes wrong. And yet, at one point, it can go horribly, horribly wrong. And I think we should always keep this in mind, that even with all the good that it's providing, even with all the stuff that we could potentially do, there is still a lot of unknown. And yeah, I mean, I don't believe in regulation for this, so I'm not sure. It's also not like chemical weapons and other things where it's actually very hard to do. Running an AI now, you can do it on your own computer. So how do you regulate this? I don't know. But whoever are working on those models, keep this in mind.
That would be a very good thought to end on. Unfortunately, I'll add something here for, let's say the people are just lost and like, why would I want to, learn AI? Why would I want to use AI? Well, there's a lot of practical things. And in the course, we also just talk about really practical things. Like, I think everybody can benefit from this technology. So you can have it, write emails for you. You can feed it information and have it summarize it. You can have it read an entire legal article and say, hey, what is the punishment? What is this? What is that? Summarize the entire thing for me. We do this all the time. The art AI can, in 30 seconds, give you 4 amazing images that you can use for your business, that you can use for creativity. That is really cool. That saved me a ton of money just being able to do that myself. Where previously I would have to, hire an artist and all this stuff. Instead, I can get all kinds of, art right in front of me, and I can modify it and all this kind of stuff. And you can use it for coding as well, as Urban shows. So there's a lot of practical applications for this research. Okay, I know Urban likes to, say, hey, write a cover letter, right? And it can do that. It's very sophisticated. So it's a very useful technology that can add to your life, right? Whatever your politics are, whatever you think of AI, this can add to your life in some way. So it's a really cool tool. And I think people really need to get a grasp of this before it's taken away from you, or before, before you get lost in this very important cultural conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you read my mind. That was actually one of my last points. And, I always mention I have a guerrilla mindset, decentralized information warfare, use whatever platforms that we can. And until we can't anymore. And just as you mentioned, in the last months, I've always, for my images for the podcast, particularly when I have original analysis contributed to the website, we have articles from time to time that are original for Geopolitics and Empire only. Trying to find license-free images to spruce up the article has become difficult, right? I don't want to use Getty or whatever, and then have someone contact me months or years later trying to sue me or something. And so I've been using the AI art generation to produce excellent artwork for free. I used to pay like $100 per podcast on rare occasion to produce a transcript. Now it's for free, right? On Substack, they automatically create a free transcript. And now I can do a free AI translation of that for the Spanish edition. And Brave's AI search has been useful recently. And Peter Duke, past podcast guest, he's been doing wizardry with AI, creating summaries on books and conspiracy topics. And so, yeah, it's people can leverage that. Real quick, some unrelated topics. The Kindle story. I know you guys posted about that. Amazon, I think it's today or tomorrow is the cutoff. Amazon will no longer allow you to access your Kindle book files only through your physical device. It'll be sent to your physical Kindle or the app on your phone or the software app on your desktop, but you won't have access to the file. I just finished the other day downloading all of my Kindle files, and I think going forward, I'm not going to be purchasing any more Kindle ebooks. I'll either be getting the physical version or buying direct from the publisher or author. I just this morning, just before we connected, Reclaim the Net published the story. I'm trying to load it. Here it is. Amazon starts disclosing that Kindle ebook purchases are just licenses, not ownership. So screw you guys, Amazon. What do you guys think about this development?
Yeah. So for a while with Kindle, since the beginning of Kindle, and this is how I always did it, right? I never connected a Kindle through Wi-Fi or anything. I would use I think it's called the download and transfer via USB. Okay. So that gives you an offline copy of a book that you purchased on Amazon. Okay. You purchased the Kindle version. You can transfer this to your device. Now, of course, Amazon looks at this and they say, oh, if they can transfer it to their device, then it could be transferred elsewhere. And it can be used and end up on all these, torrent websites and things like this. Well, yeah, that's true. And so Amazon is basically saying, we want so-called digital rights management, DRM. You're not going to be able to do that anymore. So from now on, you have to have your Kindle connected to the internet, okay? And you have to download it directly from Amazon, no physical intermediary. And what does that mean? Well, that means that they can, all the things that happen when you have quote unquote digital ownership, they could cancel your account. They could say that this book is not available anymore. They've literally uploaded in some cases. I'm trying to think of the guy, who was it, like James, the Giant Peach, that guy. They have modified the text of these classic books that is more appropriate, right? And they have delivered those new versions. So that's something that could happen. I think, ironically, they even took down George Orwell's books at one time and it just wasn't available. So there's all kinds of things that happen when you are a renter, when you're a digital renter. And so, unfortunately, what is the solution? As you said, physical copies. I'm not advocating this, of course, but I know plenty of people, they never pay for any books, right? And in past discussions, I've explained how the internet works, right? That the entire knowledge of the world is at your fingertips on the internet, right? And you can compensate creators in other ways. Again, I'm not advocating for that. One thing we do on our website is I sell all my books directly. So you can buy a direct PDF that you can do whatever you want with. Okay, so we don't really believe in the DRM approach, but yeah, it's a sad day. What do you do? Well, it depends what you have an appetite for. More physical books, trying to buy the book in a different way directly. Maybe, I don't know, Barnes & Noble might not be doing this. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a sad day. And it's sad to see these companies who are turning to rental culture. And what some people say is, well, if I can't own the book, then, what does theft exactly mean? So anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. So it's, again, it's a lot of the principles you guys talk about and just finding alternative ways, boycotting these types of companies. And then what you just mentioned, last year, Amazon threatened to ban me for leaving a book review that they or the automated system didn't like. So if they threatened me for leaving a book review, J. Michael Waller's book, Big Intel, how can I have faith in them in the future? So I'm not going to be loading up on books, and even my podcast hosting provider, I'm moving away from them. SoundCloud, based in Germany. So the fact that they deleted one of my podcasts, they can do it again, and so I'll be moving away from them and paying more just to be freer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's interesting we say that, because when I give presentation about the dark web to companies and CEOs and employees, they always ask me, what's the weirdest thing you find on dark web? And I always answer, it's book. They're like book reading club. It's often like anarchist and, like libertarian, and in the sense, like traditional sense of the term. And, things like Ayn Rand, etc. And then people ask, why, books are not illegal. And I said, well, look around you, you cannot own books, they have like DRM, they're weird stuff. They need to be connected in weird ways to your account. They can be removed. So for this Kindle, the one practical aspect, I do not own a Kindle. I have a reader, a tablet for reading, but I specifically choose a generic model to not be tied to a specific brand. I did this on purpose. But what I would recommend is, what if you just not connect it to the Wi-Fi and do not let it update? Would that work?
Well, the problem is they're not letting you have access to your books now via a physical medium. It has to be downloaded directly from the app on Kindle. Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes,
but what if you want? Okay. But just to catch up, what if Gabriel, you send me a PDF and I want to read it on my Kindle? Can I still do that?
You can. Well, from what I understand, you can still. They have the Send to Kindle app on your computer, and you can send PDFs to your Kindle. So I think you can still do that. But I think one of the problems is I don't know if it's happened with mine. I'll leave it on airplane mode, and somehow like it'll force you to connect to the internet. Like it'll reset. Maybe there's some built-in settings. So I think they're going to make it unbearable where they're going to somehow force you at some point. Oh, we got to do an update or something like that, and then they're going to force you to turn on the Wi-Fi.
It's funny because on our website, on our blog, if you go, we had actually a client who bought one of those tablets. It was a different brand. It was another one. I don't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And actually, Kobo. She wanted for her recipe. So she had like an insane collection of recipe, and she just wanted to, she saved it diligently over the years. She's like 70 years old, and she wanted to have all of them instead because she was printing PDF, and then she had huge huge physical files, and she wanted like a reader, and this thing would not let her use without internet and without like a Kobo account. And in our website, I actually show how you can hack it and bypass all this bullshit and just use it as a tablet, and you can sideload. You can basically plug a USB key, and then you can just transfer the data. And there is the article there if you're interested. But it was not for Kindle, so I'm not sure. Can you install other apps on Kindle? Anyway, so let's not go too much. But the point is, this is why I do not trust big corporation. This is when I choose mine, I choose a generic e-reader one that is made by a manufacturer that is not making books. So they're just making a device. Now, in my case, it's a cheap Chinese brand. And then what I did is it's only in airplane mode. And that's it. And I sometime enable Wi-Fi just to update the software sometime. But, if you leave it in airplane mode, you shouldn't even really care that much. This is why I just...
It's good advice. It doesn't necessarily solve the problem of now if you want to purchase from Amazon, which has a huge ebook marketplace, right? Then you can't do that. So, but yes, in general, completely agree with that. And Hervoye, I was listening to somebody on some dark part of the internet, and he was doing some kind of review of a film. And he said, in my part of the world, I couldn't actually get access to this film. So I'm just going to show you the trailer, and I'm going to have other people talk about it. And I was like, are we serious right now? Like, give me 30 seconds. I will find any film ever made, any book ever made, any academic article ever made. Give me 30 seconds. Name it. I will find it. So people need to be aware of all the options in front of them.
Yeah, and just I guess final note on the Amazon Kindle. I was actually they had the new Kindle Scribe coming out, and I thought about buying it, upgrading from my current Kindle, and it's like, heck no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to buy, is what you guys said, some generic e-reader. that could be sideloaded. And it's really annoying here in Mexico. The SIM services, the cell services have these partnerships with Amazon, and I get incessant. I've turned off my notifications, so I don't get notified. It's only when I check the SMS once in a while or whatever. There are these endless SMS messages of telling me sign up for Amazon Prime, my cell service, and then the emails too sometimes, and it's just like, I don't have Netflix. I'm not doing Amazon Prime. I don't have a Costco membership. I'm not doing any of this stuff. Just a few more real quick rapid fire topics you guys posted about Mozilla. Go ahead.
Roy, about this. If you're interested, we have an ebook about SIM swap. And actually, I think the solution we provide against SIM swap would protect you against all this spam. We could maybe see if you can give you access to it. But I think because this is insane for me. Yeah, this is I was reading someone where I live got an insane roaming bill, and they went for 2 days in Abu Dhabi and they had to pay $150 of roaming cost. And I was so there are solutions against this. And but it's described in the book because it would take another podcast to go through all those stuff. But there are ways, and that's all I'm saying. Maybe we can help you there.
We have solutions for many things if people just follow us, and we have a free show. But anyway, continue, Herboy.
Yeah, I just noticed or I hadn't noticed it before because you got a bunch of books there, ebooks on your website, Watchman Privacy Guide, Privacy in Utopia. We talked about that previously, history. And how to evade SIM swap scams ebook plus the courses, hack proof, AI resistance, escape the technocracy. Again, if people want to buy any of that, they use Geopolitics code or the link, and that helps me out and helps these guys out. Mozilla Firefox, just real quick, any thought? There was some news about them recently.
Yeah, so in the world of browsers, you really have to for all intents and purposes, two kind of competitors. You have Google, and they make Google Chrome, and you have Mozilla, which is a corporation, and they make the Firefox browser. And Firefox is what we use, what we recommend. It is just, we don't want to get too much into the weeds. It gets very complicated, but I don't want to be using Google is kind of what it comes down to. So I'm using a Firefox, or LibreWolf is kind of an offshoot of Firefox that's more locked down. It has all kinds of good stuff. Now, Firefox has been getting a lot of its funding from, ironically, making Google the default search engine when you start up Firefox. So I think they had 80% of their funding was just coming from Google paying them to have Google search as the default search in their browser. So they've had this weird model. They've had this bad planning. Basically, the company has had some really bad leadership over the years. They've abandoned their initial cause, right? They have traditionally been considered, oh, you're a cybersecurity person, you're serious about your stuff, you use Firefox. And unfortunately, they've been slipping over the years, and their funding is coming under fire, and they're about to lose a ton of their funding, and it might be the end of Firefox, which would not be a good day, because as much as I don't like what they've done, I really want at least some competition in the internet browser marketplace. And look, it costs millions, if not tens of $millions to run a browser, and to have that updated and running all the latest stuff. And already you can see that some websites, you literally cannot visit them using Firefox. So it's slipping, it's dying. And unfortunately, I don't know what can be done about it. It's just a sad day.
Well, don't worry, Gabriel, because the Mozilla Foundation, its goal, which is, the corporate entity that oversee Mozilla Corporation and browser, their goal is to bridge differences between people and foster a community. And they if you go to Mozilla Foundation,
all right, let it die.
There is not one mention about the browser. Last time, let me check. Mozilla Foundation.
So
it's all
So we're going to end up with a one world government, with a one world central, but one currency to rule them all. One browser. Imagine it's going to be like digital Soviet Union. So
here is it. Shaping the future, Mozilla follow share 25 tech vision. Read a prediction. And now here is the thing. A healthy internet is one which privacy, openness, and inclusion are known. The Mozilla Foundation empowers people to shape a healthier digital world We work across border to advocate for privacy, inclusion, decentralization, and a safer, more transparent. I do not see Firefox in here at all. This is the front page. There is no mention of Firefox. There is some AI stuff. There is championing fellowship, whatever, take action. There is not one thing about. Let me Control F.
Look on the website. Enough said. It says some of the founder Omidyar Network, Ford Foundation. So yeah, it's just not looking good at all.
It never was really good,
right.
But what would be even worse is just Chrome. Now, what I would tell people is, okay, now's the time to get into some of these somewhat de-Googled Chromes. You can't totally do that, but Brave is one example. You can learn to use Brave. So that's probably what we want to start to look into a little bit.
And other, I guess, quick questions. There was a 60-minute expose, 60 Minutes, maybe you guys saw recently, about in Germany now, if you insult someone, it's a crime, and this is just a wider trend in the West. Just any quick thoughts?
Yeah, so Germany is a total mess. Really sad day for Germany. They have crazy hate speech laws, crazy, insane. Go track down the 60-minute episode with these German lawyers who were laughing. They were laughing when they were talking about, oh yeah, we, sometimes we shut down people for, insulting us and stuff. Like, are we serious right now? So Germany is in a really bad state. We're in peak German bear market, is what I say, peak German bear market. They need to turn their stuff around. That is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace from a very noble people. And, if you're in Germany, you really need to understand your privacy techniques and really need to understand what a pseudonym means.
Alex?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know. Like, I think, I remember when I was younger and I would see China, where if you criticize something or you say something off brand, you would get people showing up at your door and asking all sorts of questions. I was like, oh my God, that seems crazy. And now you see this in like countries like UK, Germany, and there are like some insane story. For instance, like the victim of a rape, like a woman was raped, and then her aggressor got basically off the hook, like scot-free. Not even like, I don't know, not even some work, some public work or something, nothing. And then she criticized the situation on the internet, and she had to go to jail. That is insane, because they were saying that she talked about, I don't know, in public about private matter or something. I'm not sure if she named her aggressor or not, but regardless, if the aggressor was properly put in jail or at least had to do some community work, then we wouldn't be in the situation in the first place. So it's just insane. And you see this in UK, notoriously with like the rape gangs roaming around and raping children. And parents and people from the community of those gang would go to police, and the police was basically doing nothing because they were afraid to be racist. That is insane.
Well, and you might get in trouble if you bring this up, right? You might get in trouble for talking about it and using a racially tinged phrase.
Yes. Actually, what I'm describing now, I'm not sure if in UK that would be acceptable. Like what I just said, which is just describing the situation. I did not name anyone. I did not, I'm just describing an event that happened, and it's. But I think every country in the West is going in a similar downward spiral. You also see in US, like this guy in the subway that stopped a crazy person that was threatening people. And sadly, the person died, right? But then the guy who basically protected the community, who protected the people on the subway, who had every single person who was present was basically defending him. And I think he still got punished. And then a day after that, when they were like bragging about, oh, we made the subway safer, there was some piece of shit that set someone on fire. There was some homeless lady on the subway, and then she got set on fire by a piece of shit. And it's just insane. And of course, like if you prevent people from intervening in places like this, then of course, it's obvious that this is going to happen. So I wouldn't, for me, it's not just about Germany and UK. It's just I see this entire world going into madness. And you know what you said, Hervoy, about the tyranny? There is this paradox that, let me advocate for tyranny a bit. No, I'm joking, but look at the state of what's going on now. It's not just about tyranny. It's actually like we are in this weird place where there is anarchy. You have people getting raped, you have people getting set on fire on the subway, you have all sorts of stuff, you have just petty crime that is just rising and rising, all sorts of violence. In Sweden they have now like grenade attack, which was virtually unheard of 50 years ago. But at the same time, so this is anarchy, but at the same time you have tyranny, in which if you try to solve the solution, even in a non-violent way, if you just try to report what's going on, to speak up on the internet, you're going to get people out at the door showing up and asking you questions. And, in this 60 Minutes, someone said, oh yeah, in Germany, 50% of the people are afraid to say something on the internet. And I was like, well, let me guess who is afraid to say stuff on the internet after what you just said. Of course, people would be afraid, to say. And I feel like it's like a pressure cooker. It's going to reach a point where it's going to become like really crazy, and it's going to be wild, man. It's going to be very wild. Like people have no idea how wild things can go, and it's going to be funky and weird.
Well, the craziest thing for me is that this culture of totalitarianism has become normal now by the populace. The few Germans that I know, in my opinion, I believe they view what we're discussing as normal. And I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, but you guys are like so against Nazis, but you've become Nazis. Like you don't see it at all. And for many
That's hate speech in Germany, Hervoy. Don't go there. You'll be arrested.
Well, I was just going to say,
don't compare. Yeah.
I've got no interest actually. Like UK now has, well, here's another story. I didn't have my talking notes. Like this is something that I've been concerned with and obsessed with, the algorithm ghetto. And there's this American podcaster. He spent thousands on flights and hotels. He was going to go to Jordan Peterson's ARC conference, which I just think is it's the good cop version of WEF, but whatever, story for another day. And he didn't know that last month UK activated the electronic travel authorization, where you got to pay £20 and fill out the social credit form and ask for permission, and they denied him, and he was not allowed to go to the UK. And I think he was like a Christian podcaster. He's got like 200,000 followers on YouTube, and for thought crime reasons, they said, sorry, you're not approved to visit UK, and that's going to be activated in EU now. Luckily, or unluckily, I'm a EU citizen, so I think they can't deny me entry to my own country of Croatia. But what was I going to say? I honestly no longer have any interest whatsoever to go to UK or Germany or Australia or Canada. I've spent months in Canada, so I've already been there, done that. But honestly, I just don't have any more interest to go to countries like this. And yeah, so real quick. Yeah, it's just Mexico, U.S., other countries that are less worse. But Alex, something you shared as well. I plan on reading the book Alex Karp's Palantir, Bilderberg, Alex Karp's Technological Republic was just pushed. Any thoughts on him or the philosophy of these our new philosopher king technocratic overlords?
So without having read it, without having very much looked into Palantir, which is kind of a weak spot for me, I basically tweeted out, like, let me guess what's happening in this book. Okay. Celebration of the military industrial complex. We need to survey people. We need to understand everything that's going on in the US, American citizens, spy on them for the greater good, for our protection. Right. That's probably what's happening. I'm sure he has some arguments for it. I'm sure he has his own ways of expressing the same technocratic agenda that has been crippling America for 100+ years.
Yeah, I think that was I quote tweeted that, and you nailed it. I mean, I bet you that's exactly what his thesis is. But I think it's also important. We need to read the books. There was a great quote. Let me bring it up real quick. My thing is loading here. And sometimes I get criticism of this from subscribers or listeners. And it's like, they don't understand. Here's the quote from Harold Malmgren, who just passed. And he was like, he worked in the U.S. administration high up. His daughter, Pippa, who's also prominent, says that he may have stopped a nuclear war during Cuba Missile Crisis. He stopped the Joint Chiefs from pressing the button. But he says, quote, there's the news as reported on the front page, and then there's what actually happened. You need to know both. And I got some freaks on my telegrams or elsewhere saying, why do you post an article from CNN or BBC? Like, am I supposed to post RT all the time? It's equally propaganda. It's just a different kind of propaganda, right? Or China Global Times. And it's like, you have to read. It's just like he says, you got to know what they said and you got to know what actually happened. And you got to read both. And so you got to read Alex Karp's Technological Republic. And I guess my last...
Just not on Kindle.
Yeah, not on Kindle. You guys did a podcast, I think, on this, and you posted just the Ethereum hack we had, the biggest crypto hack, and then the Bitcoin just dropped massively. Just any thoughts on that space real quick, briefly?
Yeah, Urban's the expert here, so I'm going to let him take it away. There was a heist of Ethereum for $1.5 billion. Absolutely absurd. Urban?
Yeah, sure. So I will try to keep it brief. In short, Ethereum has a very different way to manage the money, like its token, than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is relatively simple. The smart contract of Bitcoin are like, transfer this chunk of money to this other person, end of it. There is not much room for anything else. And in Ethereum, it's more like you have an account, and then it's like, okay, what are the new rules to spend this money? And you could design all sorts of wild stuff. And it means that every time when you sign a transaction in Ethereum, you do not sign an actual transaction, but you sign a change of the software that is like underlying to move the funds to something else. And this means that multisig is extremely complicated in Ethereum. Instead of being this simple thing like in Bitcoin, it's basically, if two signatures are valid out of the ring of 3, then the person can do the transaction. End of it. There is not more. And in Ethereum, it's a whole-blown computer program written in the Solidity, I think is the name, which is the programming language of Ethereum. What the attacker did is they modified this contract, and I don't know exactly how they modify it, but they could have modified in something like, okay, if 3 of those signatures or the master key, and they define a new master key, sign this message, then it can transfer the fund somewhere else. And in the wallet, because you have all this complexity, the wallet cannot possibly show you everything that can happen with the software. I mean, this is hard problem to do. And on a physical level, you cannot do it. You cannot know exactly what the software does. It's one of the unsolvable problem of humanity. So what the wallet shows you, it's a very basic representation, and then you have to trust the smart contract. And so they were attacked, they were infected, and basically the 3 people signed it. The 3 people got tricked into signing a malicious thing, and this is how they did it. We go into much, much further detail. In Bitcoin, the equivalent would be that they would send a change, like the remaining of the money, to an attacker. But your wallet, because Bitcoin is much simpler, your wallet will check that the change output belongs to you and not someone else. So the wallet would have said, hey, wait, are you sure you want to spend the entire amount? Because some of it none of it will go to you. There is no address that belongs to you, and it will just warn you. And it's not possible to do with Ethereum. I do not blame the wallet manufacturer. They have nothing to do with this. People who say that it's a problem of hardware wallet, this is not. And this is absolutely not a problem of the hardware wallet. I also have no blame for the poor guy who, and if you listen to the CEO, when it happened. Also, I don't think it's his fault. I mean, it's just it's a system that is not good for humans, that is prone to errors. And I will say this, despite having literally one of the biggest heists in history of $1.2 billion stolen in like a few minutes, the exchange kept running, the withdrawal kept happening, nothing was closed. And I mean, compare this if, someone stole a similar amount of money to other financial institution, and I will let you imagine what would happen. So I think it's also a testimony to the resilience of cryptocurrencies. And yeah.
Yeah. And so just to kind of summarize, the complexity of Ethereum is kind of what led to this. And the attackers were lying in wait for months, if not years, trying to plan this backdoor. And in addition to probably manipulating the screens that people were looking at when they did this. And so the result was $1.5 billion that it seems like went into the hands of, this is the official story, the Lazarus Group, which is a cyber attack unit in North Korea. So you can imagine what those funds are being used for. And immediately, what did they do? They did the same thing that all hackers do when they acquire cryptocurrency. They started diversifying into multiple wallets. They got into Bitcoin. They got into all these other coins, and they're going to cash out somewhere down the line. But yeah, not a good day. But as Urban said, look, we don't like to proselytize cryptocurrency because there's such a cult these days. But we do, as cypherpunks, we do believe in some of the underlying values of these. We do see them working. There are serious consequences that can happen. And we don't proselytize this stuff, right? Because it's gotten out of hand. This is quite the cult. But if people want to learn about some really good crypto, like Monero, for example, that is something that we talk about. So that's kind of the summary there.
And just on the North Korea aspect, I got to put out alternate theory there. Cobra Commander Klaus Schwab and company and Cyber Polygon definitely may not have even been North Korea, right? It could have been some Western black ops group to take the money or create more and more of these scenarios. I think I read there was the headline the other day. I don't have it on me now here as something linked to the NSA or its surrounding being hacked. I'm pulling it up right now as we. Did you catch that story?
I didn't catch that story, but my thing, I guess, would be, why not just print the money? Don't they just print the money anyway? The goal there, here it is. It says home in Maryland, Anne Arundel County, home to several federal agencies in the U.S. Naval Academy, has been hit with a multi-day cybersecurity attack blamed on external origin. The headline mentioned, it's home to NSA. It hits Maryland County, that's home to NSA headquarters. No, but the goal, of course, is to create this cyber chaos to then bring in the solution, right? More digital IDs and regulated digital controls and all this sort of stuff. They can say, hey, look at these private cryptos don't work. We need, central bank digital currencies or stable coins or tethers that are regulated or whatever. But I think we're coming to the end here. Guys, we've covered a lot. Again, a lot of the stuff we talked about are in your courses or books. People can use my code to get a discount. And so any final thoughts then? I'll just throw this in there real quick. People, they know where they can find us. Watchman Privacy Podcast is free, and you'll hear us talking about these things. I just want to say that thank you, Hervoya, for what you're doing, and really call to action to the people listening. You are spending money every day on Starbucks, on Disney Plus, on McDonald's, on Netflix, all these companies that hate you and are trying to poison you and poison your mind. If you have not supported yet Hervoya, I think you know that you have an obligation to do so. So definitely, please, if you've listened to at least 2 months of Hervoya, pause the show, take out your credit card, find some way to give him back, because he's doing this full time. He's doing excellent work, and he's providing you intellectual nourishment that there is a price to that. And he's doing this full time. And it is your obligation, I think deep down, to contribute to him in some way. So please consider doing that.
All right. Well, if Urban doesn't have a final thought, I got to feed the kids. I got to pay the podcast hosting. I got to do all that sort of stuff.
Buy the physical print books now instead of Kindle.
Yeah. No, I think everything you said, Gabriel, is true. And, you need to become client again. When your using Amazon, you're not the client. You're the raw matter that is, like you're like a cow, and you give the milk, which is your data, and that's the relationship you have with big tech, and that is not a healthy relation. And then people wonder, well, am I not treated correctly? Well, because you're not the client. They don't get the money from you. They get the money from selling your data and stuff like this. And when you buy, when you support a podcaster, when you buy something from someone or a small company, you become very privileged. And I've seen this happening, when I went to a small farmer, buy meat directly from her, I'm now her client. And that's the same when, you support someone like Arvoye, when you support your favorite podcaster in a true way. And supporting them doesn't mean, to buy mattresses from some random sponsor. It means like supporting them on a deeper level. And I think this is very, very important. And thank you again, Arvoye, for inviting us.
Yeah, and again, for Geopolitics and Empire, best way to support is by becoming a paid subscriber on the Substack, and just what you guys do. I think there are still many things that we can do, and just the principle, though, for me is of just putting spokes in the wheels of the globalist technocrats, whatever it is that they're trying to get us to do, the app that they want us to download. It's just like the principle of, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around where I live here in Mexico. On the outskirts of town, the freaking government did something insane. They installed toll booths on a town that's on the outskirts of the metropolitan area, and people living in that town daily have to pay $2 one way, so it'll $4 or more to exit, and like it doesn't make any sense. And I was there recently, and the people who live there, they don't care. They just get out of their car, they push up the what do you call it, that blocks your car, the pole. They just push it up and drive through, and no one says a thing. So that's like an analog example of putting spokes, saying no, and they're not paying the toll, and they just go right through it. And so you guys talk about how to do that, again, technologically and digitally. So all the links are in the description. Escape to technocracy.com, watchmanprivacy.com. Of course, use the code Geopolitics, and subscribe to the email list, Watchman Privacy, and follow them on X for based takes. Thank you, guys.